CIS Countdown is brought to you by Canada Safeway. Canada Safeway is a proud sponsor of the 2011 Vanier Cup, November 25th in Vancouver.
And there you see the home of the 47th Vanier Cup, or at least the region of it. As the Vanier Cup, this thing is coming to Vancouver and BC Place Stadium November 25th. I'm Jim Mullen and welcome to CIS Countdown. We had a huge week in CIS football. We had the battle for first place in the AUS. We have the Battle of the Oars in Laval. We had the first place team in the home and native land going up against the upstart Golden Gales, and we also had the Battle of Saskatchewan. But let's go to Ontario and let's throw it to the desk.
The playoff picture in the OUA took shape this week. We knew that Western was the top seed, but the other first-round bye was on the line at McMaster. The T-Dot Blues needed help to get a playoff berth, and for Laurier, they just needed to pay homage to the immortal words of the late Al Davis and just win, baby. But to start, we'll head to Kingston, where the Queens Gales were playing host to the top team in the nation. Queens came into this one riding a 5-game winning streak, facing the #1 Mustangs, who are looking to cap off a perfect regular season. Western playing without 11 of its starters, including QB Donnie Marshall. Billy McPhee goes for the Gales, and they get off to a great start. Very first play on offense. They hand the ball off to Ryan Gramberg, and the nation's leading rusher does the rest.
He's got speed. It's a foot race. 30, 20, 10, touchdown Queens.
The crowd is loving it as Gramberg takes it 88 yards to give Queens the 7-0 lead. The D also getting it done early, pressuring the Mustangs' backup QB, Ben Rossum, forcing the fumble to take over. Queens gets the ball inside the red zone, but have to settle for this 24-yard field goal. The first of 4 for Dan Village on the day. It's 10-0 for the home side. Jump to the third quarter. Gales now up 21-0. Third stringer Ian Noble in the game. He tosses the screen pass to James Savakis, but he gets popped and the ball squirts loose. Josh Sultana picks it up off the turf and takes it in for an 11-yard scoop and score, and the route is on. That made it 28-0, and the Gales march onto a 37-0 win, the first time the Mustangs have been shut out since 1973. Ryan Gramberg has a massive day, 3 yards short of 200 on the afternoon, goes for that 88-yard burst to kick it all off for Queens. Western quarterback Ian Noble rushes for 127 yards in the loss. He also threw 2 interceptions. Meanwhile, Billy McPhee ends up with 192 yards through the air. The Golden Gales clinch third place in the OUA. Despite the loss, the Mustangs are still the top team in the conference. Over to McMaster, where the Marauders were hosting Ottawa with second place in the conference and a first-round bye on the line. First quarter, McMaster already up 17-3. Kyle Quinlan finds Michael DeCroce open. DeCroce dives in. Marauders up 21. McMaster's first possession of the second. It's Quinlan to Robert. Call me Bobby Babick. It's 31-3. After Ottawa finally gets a touchdown, Quinlan throws his third of 4 TDs in the first half. Put a fork in those GGs because they are done. Quinlan with a monster game, 367 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, and he sat in the entire fourth quarter. That's incredible. DeCroce caught 6 passes for 124 yards and the 1 major. With the win, McMaster earns a bye in this weekend's OUA first round. In the other OUA games, Laurier secures the 6th and final playoff spot with a 15-10 win over Guelph on the road. Shane Kelly finishes up 23 of 34 for 183 yards in the low-scoring affair. The Golden Hawks match up with Queens in the first round, one of the hottest teams in the conference. Windsor will meet Ottawa after their 40-15 win over York to wrap up the season. Adam Kennedy throws for 338 yards and 4 touchdowns, hooking up a Jordan Verskratchen twice to finish 5-3 on the year. The Lancers are in the playoffs for the first time since 2006. Congratulations. The Varsity Blues hammer Waterloo 45-6 in the season finale, but narrowly miss out on the playoffs once again with a 3-5 record. In his final CIS game, Andrew Gillis throws for 149 yards and 3 scores and 1 rushing touchdown. Toronto combines for 277 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. So Western can't finish off the undefeated season. However, they will be the #1 seed, which of course means a first-round bye. As I said earlier, McMaster earns the other bye in the OUA. The opening round of the playoffs begins this Saturday with Queens hosting Laurier and Ottawa welcoming Windsor. Out west, the conference is inching closer to the final weekend of the regular season, which is shaping up to be a great finish with a couple of playoff spots still up in the air. One of those teams fighting for one spot are the Regina Rams, who were in action hosting provincial rivals, the number 10 ranked Saskatchewan Huskies. Things don't start well for the home side on the very first play. Zach Olenek tosses up a gift to Tony Mikulchuk, setting the Huskies inside the Rams 20. 2 plays later, and Saskatchewan gambles early. They go for it on 3rd down from 8, and Ben Coakwell finds room on the outside, takes it in for the touchdown, his 4th on the season. The Huskies capitalize on the turnover. It's 7-0. Early in the second, Saskatchewan almost coughs up the lead. The Rams punt sails over the head of Jarrett Lambert into the end zone. He picks up the ball, trying to make something happen, but loses the handle. Luckily, the Huskies recover and only give up a single point. Close call there for the Dogs. With Saskatchewan now forced to punt, they make another mistake. The snap is too high for punter Sean McDonald. A scramble ensues, and the Rams get it at the Huskies' 16-yard line. However, this time the home side catches in on the mistake. Adrian Charles behind center in the Wildcat. He punches it in from a yard out, and we got ourselves a tie ball game. Rams would add a field goal to take a 12-8 lead into the half. Jump now to the 4th, and the Huskies make a big play. Trent Peterson rolls out the play-action fake and finds Rory Colhert, who beats his man and takes it 70 yards down to the Rams 15. But a Regina personal foul would move the ball back to the 1. 2 plays later, Jelani Gilbert-Norn's second effort gets him into the end zone, and the visitors are up 16-12. It's now a 1-point game, and JGK coughs up the biscuit. The Rams eventually recover, but do nothing with Saskatchewan's 9th fumble of the game. But wait, with 5 seconds left, the Huskies punting to put the game away, and this happens.
McDonald, the snap goes over his head. McDonald punts the ball, and it's picked up, and no seconds remain on the clock.
Rams just fall on the ball, don't elect to run or even kick the ball. What a mistake. The Huskies escape with a 1-point win. Olenek finishes 21 of 33 for 164 yards and 2 interceptions in the loss. Peterson throws for 152 yards. Rory Colhert, who had that big 70-yard catch and a run in the 4th, led all receivers with 95 yards on the night. Regina running back Adrian Charles left the game in the 2nd and did not return, though word is he will play next week. The Huskies, meanwhile, with a win next week and a UBC loss to Calgary, can secure 2nd place and a playoff game at Griffith Stadium. The Rams' hopes are resting on what happens in Calgary. They need the Dinos to defeat Manitoba to keep their slim playoff hopes alive. So we shift our attention to that game. Calgary comes in as the 2nd-ranked team in the nation. Matt Walter honored before the game for becoming the school's all-time leading rusher. First quarter, all Dinos. Stephen Lambala, 2-yard touchdown, 7-0 Calgary. Then it's Walter adding to his record Dino totals. He forces his way to the house for a 14-0 lead, but still in the first, Mike Edom with a huge hit on Khalil Williams. He fumbles the ball, and the Dinos recover. From there, Eric Dulesky finds Chris Dobko, 17-yard pass and catch. Williams rolls out, but he's tracked down by Zach McNeil, who gets the sack. Bisons do get something going in the 2nd. Williams airs it out to Tyson Takazaki. That would lead to a Bison score, but Dinos pulled away in the 2nd half. 41-24 the final, and they clinch 1st place in the Canada West. Dinos QB Eric Dulesky goes 16 of 24 for 242 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also ran one in, but it's Matt Walter who's the star. He tweeted at halftime that he wasn't getting enough touches, and boy did he get a lot in the 2nd. He runs for 141 yards and a touchdown in the win. Stephen Lambala and Anthony Woodson rushed for 88 yards apiece. For the Bisons, Williams throws for 332 yards and a score, while Anthony Coombs goes for 81 yards on the ground. The Dinos win sets up a win-and-you're-in scenario this weekend in Manitoba. The winner of the Bisons-Rams game secures the 4th and final spot in the Canada West in what should be a doozy of a game. In the other game from the CEW, the UBC Thunderbirds move one step closer to hosting a playoff game with a 39-22 win over Alberta. Billy Green goes for 17 of 29 for 309 yards, tossing 2 touchdowns. The The first coming just 2 minutes and 39 seconds into the game, a 43-yard strike to Mitch Schuster. However, with UBC up 20-15 in the third quarter, the T-Birds cornerback Sam Carino's 53-yard interception touchdown put the game on ice for the Birds. UBC is now 5-2 on the year and just need a win at home against Calgary on Saturday or a Saskatchewan loss in Edmonton to clinch that long-awaited home playoff date. The Golden Bears, meanwhile, are looking to avoid their first winless season in team history. So we take a look now at the standings in the CW. The T-Birds sitting in second for now at least, but the intrigue is down below the bottom of the standings between Regina and Manitoba. The Bisons hold that 4th spot at 3-4, but as I already mentioned, a Rams win on their home turf Saturday will put them in the postseason. Head now to the Q, where Laval and Sherbrooke met with the #1 seed in the conference on the line. Bishops needed a win over McGill to stay alive in the playoff race. But we'll start on the campus of Concordia University, where it was an intercity battle between the home side Stingers and their crosstown rivals, the Montreal Carabins. Late in the first quarter, and the Carabins are marching, Alexander Nadeau-Pouise connects with Alexander Forche-Labonte for a 26-yard pickup, which leads to this naked bootleg from Pouise, who has nothing but daylight in front of him. He scampers in for an 8-yard score. Carabins take the early lead. Head to the final minute before the half. Carabins up 12-1. Concordia with the blitz, and it's the Alexes that combine again. Pouise airs it out to Labonte, who hauls it in, beats his man in a foot race for a 55-yard catch and score. Pouise goes to celebrate with his teammate, who dogpile onto Labonte. That made it 19-1 at the half. Montreal goes on to a 36-1 blowout win. Pouise ends up 1 yard shy of 300 on the day, tosses 2 scores and the 1 pick. His main man, Labonte, caught 3 passes for 91 yards, including that 55-yarder. Montreal improves to 6-2, tied with Sherbrooke for second place. In Laval, round 2 in the Battle of the Aors saw the Boys in Rouge take it once again, led by Sebastian Levesque, who had another monstrous weekend with 184 yards on the ground and 2 scores, including an 88-yard score late in the second quarter, which put Laval up 19-0. They went on to cruise to a 40-10 win, securing first place in the conference. In the other score from the Q, Bishops wins 21-18 to move into 4th place tie with Concordia. The Gators handing McGill its 21st straight loss. Jordan Heather tosses for 350 yards, 2 touchdowns. His favorite target, Quincy Van de Cruz, goes for 150 yards and 1 score through the air. Bishops needs to win their finale at home against Laval this weekend and hope McGill can do them a favor versus Concordia. Otherwise, there's no postseason this year for the Gators. Take a look at the Quebec standings. Bishops tied with the Stingers at 3-5, but Concordia holds the tiebreaker after a 25-18 win in Week 2. Laval locks up first place with their win over Sherbrooke, who are now tied for second with Montreal at 6-2, though the Ver-et-Or own the tiebreaker with a 2011 victory over those Carabins in Week 5. We wrap things up in the AUS. Acadia clinches first place over St. Mary's Huskies with a 41-28 victory on the weekend. Down 28-24 going into the 4th, the Axemen took the lead on a Kyle Graves 9-yard TD toss to Mike Squires. Then a blocked punt return with 5 minutes left sealed the win for Acadia, who have home field advantage throughout the AUS playoffs. St. FX kept Mount Allison winless, winning 42-41 in double overtime on the road. The X-Men came all the way back from down 17 at the half. Jordan Catterall's 119-yard punt return tied the game at 34. In overtime, the Mounties scored but missed on their 2-point conversion, opening the door for Acadia to score and kick the extra point for the win. Quick look at the standings. As mentioned, Acadia goes into the playoffs next weekend as the #1 seed in the conference at 6-1. They'll meet Mount Allison, while 5-2 St. Mary's will host St. FX in the other semifinal. So most of the playoff matchups are set around the CIS, although the Canada West is going to be awfully fun to follow this weekend. Back to you, Jimmy.
When we return, we will preview the OUA playoffs and the final week of the Canada West season. You are watching CIS Countdown.
There's a look at BC Place, home of the 47th Vanier Cup, which goes in just about a month's time. Welcome back to CIS Countdown. I'm Chad Klassen. Lots to get into in the second half of the program. The focus here in Vancouver is, of course, on the big weekend, Grey Cup weekend, which goes in a month. That includes the Vanier Cup on the Friday, November 25th. And the journey to that championship game starts for 4 teams this weekend out east as the OUA playoffs get going. To talk about that and more, we're joined by Andrew Wadden in studio and, of course, Jim Mullen here. Great time for sports fans when the postseason start, and of course, they start this weekend. Just talk a bit about the OUA playoffs and what we expect from this weekend as the quarterfinals get going.
Well, it's the quarterfinals, so that means number 1 and number 2 get to sit waiting in the wings. Let's talk a bit about number 1 and number 2. As we saw the Western Ontario Mustangs in this past week get blanked for the first time since 1973. This is not the real Purple Pony team, Andrew.
No, it's not the real Purple Pony team whatsoever. I mean, they had 11 of their starters not playing, including Donnie Marshall and those fantastic running backs in Riva and Varga. I mean, you saw a good Queens team in terms of what they were able to produce on the field, but it's going to be a much different opponent the next time, that is, if they get to face those Purple Ponies, as you say.
Yeah, let's get to that quarterfinal game. The Queens Gales riding a 6-game winning streak, riding full of confidence off that shutout win against Western. They match up against Laurier, sort of an up-and-down team this year. They make the playoffs, but Queens is the team to look forward to in the Ontario.
I would think so at this point because they're so strong on defense. They have not given up a rushing TD so far this year, and that's an amazing stat through 8 games in the OUA, and it's even more important when you consider that Queens, playing out of Richardson Stadium, plays on that grass surface, and as the weather gets nastier, you know teams are going to want to go to the running game more and more, and they've got a pretty decent running back on the offensive side with Ryan Granberg, only the 3rd Queens running back in their history to go over 1,000 yards, and he may be the leading candidate for the Heck Creighton Award.
Next matchup is Windsor at Ottawa. Should be an interesting matchup. Pretty much a pick-em. A couple weeks ago, they had a great game that came down to the wire. What do you think of that one, Andrew?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this could possibly be the best game of the entire CIS season. Like you were saying earlier, 2 weeks ago, they had a 32-30 game. I'm predicting here, and I know we're going to save the predictions, but I'm going to say that this one's going to be real close, and like I said, possibly the best game of the entire season. And
it's highly likely out of all that the McMaster Marauders could face the winner of that game. They're the other team that's getting the bye week, and Kyle Quinlan, their quarterback, if he would have played game in, game out, he's the guy that could have qualified for the Heck Creighton Award. Of course, he got into some off-field problems, was suspended for 3 games, but is still the leading passer on a per-game basis in the entire CIS.
Yeah, McMaster certainly a team to look forward to moving forward, but I want to get into Western because obviously the question that everyone across the country wants to know is Donnie Marshall going to play, because that's a huge factor.
Well, you know, it does help them that they get the extra week off, and if you were watching on the Score this past weekend, you would have seen Donnie Marshall trying to warm up, trying to test that leg, and trying to get into a framework and a mindset where he was going to get ready to play that game. So Donnie Marshall, I think, will be ready, and that extra week of rest could be huge for the Western Mustangs.
If Donnie doesn't go, then who does start for Western? Ian Noble looked good. He had 127 yards rushing and did some good things. Ben Rossung, not so much. Who do you think would take over?
I think you've just answered your own question there. I think it's Ian Noble. I think he has a bit of experience. I think he can move the team from time to time. Maybe some inopportune turnovers in that game against the Queens Golden Gales that didn't allow the offense to really get on the rails. So I think Noble would be the answer in that position.
And just to build off this discussion, what do we expect from Western? It's been not only the shutout loss against Queens, but the last couple weeks they barely beat Toronto 21-9 without Donnie Marshall. So what should we expect? Are they a team that maybe can get knocked off?
Well, Andrew, I think you'd agree with me that this is a game that could be called quarterback instead of Canadian football. And without Donnie Marshall, they take a huge step backwards, don't they?
Yeah, they do take a huge step backwards, but I mean, the thing about this Western team, and I've been saying it all season long, they're going to go as far as those two backs are going to take them. The one question, I think, the biggest question with the Purple Ponies, as you say, is the defense. So that defense is suspect, and they were very suspect against Queens. Again, I know there was 11 starters not playing, but really, how far can Varga and how far can Riva take you? And then if Marshall gets thrown into the mix, I think you might see those guys go right to the Vanier Cup.
Yeah, Western hoping to have a repeat of 2008. They had a similar season then. They got blown up by Queens, but bounced back to make the Vanier Cup. They lost to eventually to Laval. They're hoping to repeat that. You picked Western right off the hop to start the season. Are you still leaning towards the Mustangs?
Well, I picked Western right off the start. There's no doubt about that, but I thought McMaster would give them a much better push. But you got to go all the way back to week 1 to see that big loss on behalf of McMaster versus Western. I think McMaster could come back and give them a fight in the finals, but you don't know about Queens. I think they are truly the dark horse of the pack. They stumbled out of the gates, but they've got all the momentum on their side. And defense is where their strength is, and the running game is where their strength is, and that's where you want to be in November.
Andrew, what are you predicting as far as who gets out of the OUA?
I can't go against Western right now. I mean, I know they've stumbled a bit. To me, it almost seems like that team is kind of going through the motions, as you'd say. I mean, they've got banged up a little bit with Donnie Marshall being down, and of course they sat Riva and Varga last week. I mean, their third string running back would be a first string on some teams. So the thing about Western is I think they are maybe playing a little coy right now, trying to get themselves to these playoffs, where I think they'll start to dominate.
Yeah, I think Western's going to be fine at the end, but I'm almost siding with you, Jim, as far as McMaster being the team that maybe we should watch out for because Kyle Quinlan is playing his best football since returning from that suspension, as you said, the most yards per game in the CIS. And as far as Western, yeah, they've got a running game, but without a quarterback, I don't think you're going to get very far. So I'm going definitely with McMaster. The start of those Ontario playoffs should be a lot of fun, but we're going to transition to the Canada West. The UBC Thunderbirds hosting the Calgary Dinos this weekend. UBC needing a win to secure second place. Andrew, what are you thinking of that game?
Well, I mean, it's going to come down to whether UBC can stop the rush or not. They allowed 299 yards against Alberta this past weekend, and of course, Calgary's got a very big arsenal when it comes to running backs. Of course, Matt Walter and Stephen Lambala back there. So really going to come down to whether UBC can stop that rush, because that is the Dinos' forte.
Jim, you guys are covering the game on Shaw, the feature game of the week from Thunderbird Stadium. What are you expecting from the T-Birds in a big game to secure a home playoff date?
Well, let's first of all take a look at the Calgary Dinos on this side and see what's at stake for them. They're 7-0 right now. They have an opportunity to be the first 8-0 team in the history of the Calgary Dinos program, and that goes back to 1964. Although there's nothing at stake for the Dinos in this game. They are in first place. They're not moving down. UBC's no threat. But Blake Nill, the head coach in Calgary, is a proud and competitive guy. He is going to want to register that 8-0 record, especially in a year where Peter Cannellan, the former coach of the Calgary Dinos, was just inducted into the Canadian Football Hall of Fame. So expect the Dinos to come out with their starters, with an assertive game plan. I don't think they're going to pull back at all against the UBC Thunderbirds. That's going to be a major test, as Andrew mentioned, to their ability to defend against the run. You go back to the last time these two teams played, UBC had the lead in Calgary with about 2 minutes and change left. Calgary took the ball in their own 9-yard line. They ran 8 running plays and won the game. Stephen Lambala really being the guy that led things for the Calgary Dinos. But on the other side, Billy Green and that UBC offense can outscore you. So if UBC gets the big play and they shut down the run like they did against the Regina Rams 2 weeks ago, UBC has a chance in this one, and with a win, they clinch their first home playoff date since the 1990s.
Yeah, 1999 was the last time they hosted. Andrew, we saw Matt Walter tweeting at halftime. What do you think he's going to tweet on Saturday?
I don't think his head coach will be allowing him to tweet anymore at halftime, but maybe he will, considering the second half he had. you know, again, like Jim said, I get the feeling too that Calgary really, they don't have a whole lot to play for, but they are going to come out and try and get this win. This is a statement win for Calgary. So he'll probably be tweeting happy trails, UBC, at halftime if he's lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to switch to the big game in the Canada West, and that's Manitoba-Regina. Win and you're in. Manitoba wins and they stay in the playoffs. Regina somehow still has a chance. What do you think of that game?
I think it all comes down to Adrian Charles and how healthy that shoulder is. He took a nasty knock on the shoulder in the first half against the Saskatchewan Huskies, drove it into the turf, a bit of a helmet-on-helmet hit along with that hit that knocked him out of the rest of the game. It was a coaching staff decision to rest the 2010 All-Canadian. If he can produce against the Manitoba Bisons, this game is over. If Manitoba can respond with consistent offense, not turn the ball over 3 times like they did in the first 5 minutes against the Calgary Dinos, then they are the team that has the chance. And I actually think that Manitoba is the most dangerous of these two teams going into the playoffs, because with Dembski and Coombs returning kicks and returning punts, they are a threat at any time to score from anywhere on the field. They are indeed a couple of super freshmen.
Yeah, they have to get in the playoffs first, and meaning a win against Regina at home. This has all been good. Thanks a lot, guys, for taking the time to sit and chat about Canada West football.
Anytime.
It's a good transition into this week's CIS football top 10 rankings. Bit of shuffling at the top with Western's blowout loss at Queens, although you can't put much stock into it with the absence of 11 starters. But the Mustangs do drop to number 4 on the list, moving below even McMaster, who's 3rd after manhandling Ottawa at home. Calgary moves up to the number 1 ranking, and Laval's now 2nd, clinching 1st in the queue. 2 new teams added to the list. Queens finally makes it in with their 6th straight win over the weekend. The Gales are a dangerous team entering the playoffs. Acadia, the top team in Atlantic Canada, makes their first appearance in the top 10 as well, coming in at number 9. Now to the big games this weekend. We've already talked about the opening round of the OUA playoffs, Queens and Laurier, Ottawa and Windsor. But don't forget about some other important games going on across the country. Canada West Shaw Game of the Week kicks off here in Vancouver, as we mentioned. The UBC Thunderbirds hosting the Calgary Dinos, looking to lock up 2nd place in their first home playoff date since 1999. Also watch out for that Regina-Manitoba game. Winner takes all. Winner goes into the Canada West playoffs. And in Quebec, the big game goes in Montreal, where the Carabins host Sherbrooke in a battle for 2nd place in the conference. For everyone at CIS Countdown, I'm Chad Klassen. Enjoy the first taste of playoff action. We'll be back in 7 days to break it all down. See ya. CIS Countdown is brought to you by Canada Safeway. Canada Safeway is a proud sponsor of the 2011 Vanier Cup, November 25th in Vancouver.